Oh, don't worry about it. The details are in the fine print, but just sign and we'll move forward. Hey there, folks. It's not really going to be about HBO and HBO Max, but we are going to start there because I feel like starting there allows me to expand out into a bigger conversation that I really wish was being had more than I see, because all the stuff going on with HBO, every problem, everything going on, and I'll get into some of the specifics because there's definitely a specific thing I'm going to pick on to really exemplify the point where I'm going with this. Like, all sorts of people are calling this out as BS, from consumers to insiders. The stock has taken a hit. Like, everyone seems to be going like, this is nonsense. The thing is, it's nonsense that is kind of indicative of a lot of what other companies either have done, are doing more quietly, or have the ability to do and probably will do in the future. So, quick refresher. Warner Brothers has merged with Discovery. It's now Warner Brothers Discovery. They have a new CEO who is very focused on, I'm sure his words will probably be trimming the fat. I've talked about some of this already. I did a video previously. I'm going to focus in on HBO, as I mentioned before. Now, a lot of stuff that's going on with HBO, we already know they're ending HBO Max. They're merging it with Discovery Plus. It'll be a new thing by this time next year. Who knows what it'll be called or what'll be on it? Because sort of where I want to leap off on this is people have taken notice that stuff is being removed from the platform. Without warning, without notice, it's just gone. Now, in terms of what stuff, well, it's the kind of stuff that's consistent with what CEO David Zaslav has said he wants the platform to be, which is to de-emphasize animation, de-emphasize things for children, de-emphasize anything that is not, big budget and pulling in a lot, and I don't think he said this part out loud, but de-emphasizing anything that doesn't pull significant numbers, even if it is beloved. So, I'm going to pick a specific show to use as an example. There are plenty of other shows. This is not a comprehensive list of everything that has or will be pulled off. But I'm going to start by talking about the show Infinity Train. Infinity Train is an animated series that I did reviews on over in the break room of Geeks, and it's a show I love. It got 4 seasons. They wanted to do more. A lot of people don't like the 4th season that much. I actually do like it, though I get why it bugs some people, especially as it being the last season. But the overall thing is they had 4 seasons. It was very niche. It was sci-fi-ish. It had a very, devoted fan base, but it wasn't a big, huge runaway hit. They managed to get 4 seasons, which is good. Would have liked to have seen more. It wasn't pulling in the numbers. It got canceled. And that was before the merger, to be clear. It happens. But now it's gone off the platform. It's not there anymore. You can't watch it on HBO Max anymore. But because it was produced for HBO Max and the rights to it are held by HBO and Warner Brothers, that means you can't see it streaming anywhere legally at all. It's gone. And it goes a little worse than even that. Because if you're thinking, well, okay, well, you can still get physical copies, right? Well, no. First of all, only 2 of the 4 seasons ever got released to physical media. There were DVDs made available the first 2 seasons. There were never DVDs made available of the second 2 seasons. And coincidentally, I'm sure, almost immediately after the show was pulled off HBO Max, the DVDs are no longer available for purchase. You can't buy them other than secondhand now. Now, you can, in theory, still digitally purchase the show on something like Amazon. For the time being, there's no guarantee that that will remain true. And I would actually, at this point, not be surprised at all if it's also gone from there. Now, I can't remember if this is the case with Infinity Train or not, but definitely with some of the shows that have been pulled, HBO Max has also removed all promotional material from their YouTube channels, any trailers officially that had been put up. It's like they're trying to scrub the fact that it ever existed at all. So, What I want to use this as a chance to talk about is the concept of digital ownership, how flimsy that concept is, how unsupported it is, how quickly it can be taken away, and how this fits into a larger world that corporations are trying in fits and starts and have been for some time to build and make us live in, where we own nothing and subscribe for everything. So let's be fair, and let's acknowledge the reasons that a company like HBO, like Warner Brothers, might have for removing these things, other than some nonsense like it doesn't fit our corporate portfolio. Because if that was the case, theoretically, you could just sell it. Sell it to somebody else. Sell it to Crunchyroll. They have all sorts of weird niche animated stuff. Sell it to Shudder. It's got horror elements. Somebody will buy it. It'll still be available somewhere. It'll be a pain to have to go to a different service to still see it, but it would still be there. So that's the first thing. They are not even opting to unload these assets in any meaningful way. They're just revoking the ability for consumers, for fans, to ever have access to them again. And the primary reason, other than, as I mentioned, this nonsense about our corporate portfolio and all that kind of crap, is to reduce costs. Because server costs are a thing. And it costs them money to host on the servers and make available to stream at a decent definition and everything. It costs them money to have these things sitting around. And if they're not being viewed by that many people, from one perspective, you could say, well, we're not getting our money's worth on that, just scrap it. Now, there are other perspectives that could say it's worth keeping around even the stuff that isn't that heavily viewed, because having a wide variety of stuff is never a bad thing. And unless something is like hated, if something has a passionate fan base, keep it around, because maybe that fan base was passionate about that and they're here and now they'll find other things. But you start taking that away from them, well, you're going to have some people who start to go, well, clearly the kinds of things that I like won't be here anymore. I should leave. So there is a kind of a holistic approach to offering a wide variety of things. And the idea that, yes, you have your big, huge mainstream things. You have your Game of Thrones series. You have your DC-related stuff and all that. But you also have the smaller niche things that really get people hooked in to stay, because the big mainstream stuff people show up for, but people stay because they find stuff that feels like it's much more just for them. And that's the stuff that's being taken away right now. But as I said, to be fair, there is the raw numbers perspective. It's costing us money to host this. Let's not spend that money anymore. And that's about the only bone I'm going to throw to corporations in regards to all of this. Because from any consumer perspective, this is not good at all, because this removes our ability to enjoy something, a piece of art that we loved, and now it's gone. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this too quickly, but my feelings about piracy have evolved over the years. For the record, I don't pirate stuff. I don't encourage people to pirate. But the reason I don't pirate things has changed. When I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I had a more philosophical stance of, you should pay for the things to help ensure that the artists get money. And like with some mediums, like if you're pirating, say, music from an indie label or something that an artist released themselves, yeah, you are actually taking money out of people's pockets. But like from a big corporation, I don't really think that anymore. Aside from the fact that there's been a number of studies that kind of back up the idea that a pirated copy is not actually a lost sale, and generally most pirates are people who were never going to pay for it and they're only getting it because they can get it for free. So the idea that piracy is a lost sale doesn't really hold up anyway. But like I said, when I was in my 20s, early 30s, I had a more philosophical notion as to why I didn't pirate. These days, it's just purely just paranoia and logistical. I'm a little bit of a jinx with technology. So like, I don't trust it basically going off brand. And I swear, every time I mess with mods for programs, or like use this third-party program to get your thing to do this, or access this thing this way, like something goes wrong. And I don't mean like I accidentally downloaded a virus, though I don't like that possibility either. I just mean like it breaks something in a way that makes no sense to me. And everyone was like, well, that shouldn't happen. I'm like, I understand it shouldn't, but it did. But my point is, at this point, I don't pirate because I'm just paranoid about my computer breaking. So that's why I don't do it now. But I don't have that philosophical argument anymore. Because when I did pirate, way back when I was in college, the Napster days. Oh, yeah, those were the days. But I kind of stopped pirating once things like iTunes came out and you could just buy the albums and buy the music directly. I'm not going to say stop completely, but I did pirate a little bit at that point. The times I did was when I couldn't get access to something. Because I like video game soundtracks a lot. And back then, before music streaming became a thing, it was actually quite difficult to get a lot of video game soundtracks through legitimate means. A lot of soundtracks never got actually pressed onto CDs, or if they did, it was like only in Japan, and you'd have to pay import costs to get them over here. And if I felt like I could not attain something, either at all or at what anyone would consider a reasonable price, my thought is, if you're not giving me the ability to give you a reasonable amount of money for it, yes, I will pirate it. And I feel like that is a situation that things like what HBO is doing now is creating. I don't think I've ever said that I've never rung the bell of you are encouraging piracy. Here you actually are. You're making it so there is no way for customers to get the thing they want other than to, as far as you are concerned, steal it. Funny thing about stealing is that even outside of streaming services, even if you're thinking, okay, but the things I really care about, I buy digital copies of. Those can be taken away from you. Those can be stolen back by whatever service you got it through. And the thing is, people who are concerned about digital ownership, who are concerned about customer rights and concerned about the consumers, they've been saying this for a very long time, but it's largely been brushed off because for the most part, it's been a theoretical problem. But the thing about theoretical problems that you don't put in safeguards to prevent is they eventually become real problems. And we are now starting to see that. And I'll give you a couple of specific examples of how it is starting to crop up. So we're going to start with Sony and the PlayStation Store. So back in 2021, Sony discontinued the ability to purchase TV or movies through the PlayStation Store service. They decided to restrict it. We're just doing games through this service now. And prior to that, you could buy movies or TV episodes. I don't think that many people did. That's probably why they discontinued it. Now, at the time that they did that, people who had already purchased stuff and it was in their movie library or whatever, they still got to have it. It was fine. No problem. Yeah, there started to be a problem, though. So in July of this year, Sony removed all of the films and television that was owned by Studio Canal from its service. And that included removing it from the digital libraries of people who had actually bought it through the PlayStation Store. They took it back. Now, if you're wondering, why haven't you heard about this? Well, it's pretty underreported, largely because it only affected two territories, Germany and Austria. Now, the reason in this case had to do with changes in the licensing agreement between Sony and Studio Canal. They reached some kind of impasse in these territories for whatever reason, and an agreement couldn't be reached, so they had to pull the stuff back. Now, some of you who might be more inclined to defend the corporations, if you are, I'm not sure why you're on my channel, but just to indulge the idea, you might be thinking, okay, but that's a copyright dispute. They didn't maliciously take stuff back. Well, yeah, that's true, except you know what happens to your DVDs or your Blu-rays of movies if there's a copyright dispute and something has to be discontinued and it's not allowed to be sold at any point further into the future on that medium? Nothing. You still have your DVDs. You still have your Blu-rays. This kind of stuff should not impact things that you bought. Most people would assume that it doesn't, but it does when you're talking streaming and when you're talking digital. Now, it is possible through legislation to put protections in place to demand basically as much as is reasonably possible, creating a parity between physical and digital ownership. That if you bought something and you own it, you can't lose it for reasons that would not have also affected a physical purchase. Now, there is, even if laws were ever put into place to do that, which currently there are not, and so far as I can tell, no one's trying to. So this isn't a problem that anybody in politics right now appears to even be trying to fix. But even if they did that for a moment, there's still the problem of what about when the servers get shut down? Because like some of these services allow you to fully download, others, what you're buying is access to the thing on their server. What if the company goes under? What if the server gets shut down? It's still gone. You still lose it. You know, if Nintendo ever went away, went under, bankrupt, something was gone. My Nintendo systems, my NES, my Super Nintendo, my N64, my GameCube, the Wii that I barely ever played, they don't suddenly stop working because the company went under. Now we are living in a world with these digital purchases. And as most of them are still hosted on servers, even though we bought them, this creates a problem not only for consumer protections and the idea that you own a thing, but also in addition to that, just it creates a problem for archiving art. Like what's going on with Infinity Train right now, at a certain point, when it's all completely digital, when it's streamed digitally, it's made available digitally, the promotion is all digital, it can effectively be scrubbed from history. It's like it never existed. Like on principle, that's kind of messed up. Now, I did say that right now, there's no legislation that is addressing any of this that I have been able to find. That is not to say that nobody is trying to address it. There's a woman named Amanda Caudell, and she attempted to sue Amazon in 2020. She actually attempted to initiate a class action lawsuit, and it was specifically over this issue. Basically, she had combed through the user agreement, and she was fully aware that Amazon was capable, if it chose, for any reason, to claw back and revoke her access to any movie that she had purchased through the Amazon service. And her argument in court was that the use of words like buy and purchase play into an idea of permanent ownership. And that Amazon retaining the rights to be able to revoke that ownership means that they were misleading their customers. Now, this did not actually get to trial. It was dismissed by a judge late last year. The reason being not that there was no grounding in her actual claims that that was an issue, but rather it had to do with standing to bring the lawsuit. Basically, what happened was the judge said, none of your purchases have actually been revoked. Therefore, damage has not been done to you. Therefore, you had no grounds to sue. What Amanda Caudell was trying to do was basically trying to force the courts to make a ruling before it actually started happening and address the problem preemptively, but courts aren't good for that. Courts are meant generally for remunerations and or punishment after something that has already happened. It's not a route that you can take to try and prevent something before it happens. So the courts did not actually issue any kind of ruling and never saw a jury. This idea of whether or not that is misleading for some place like Amazon to say, oh, well, you bought that movie digitally when you didn't. Not really. Not as most of us understand what a purchase is. And even if that is false advertising, that's not seeing a courtroom case right now. But I'm basically on her side in terms of her claims. The fact that Amazon isn't doing that, the fact that they have the ability to me, that means that it's not a purchase. We don't own it. We rent it. And it expands out further. We are paying for access to things, but we don't actually own them. To me, to own something means that I get to retain whatever its value is. But with digital purchases, especially through streaming services or where it's hosted on a server somewhere else and you're basically just buying access to stream it, whatever value it retains, we don't get to have. This was a big part of why video games have done the big push, not only for digital purchases, but for the live service model of gaming, which thankfully has started to back off a little bit because They really went in harder than was going to work. But that also brings up another thing that I'll get to in a second. But the whole idea of a live service was we release a game and, there's the initial, people buy the game. They buy the game, but we're not going to release another sequel in 2 years. We're going to continue to serve this. It's a live service. It keeps evolving. We put out new content for this thing. And you can buy passes for the new content. You can buy the cosmetics. You can buy this. You can buy that. It gives the option for a continual flow of income as opposed to a single purchase. And the main reason it failed was that the games sucked. Because in theory, the promise of a live service was you initially buy a complete game that keeps evolving as it goes. But what would usually happen is they released a bare bones game that was geared for monetization and not actual gameplay or fun. And then rather than releasing the promised roadmap of content over 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, they were actually spending their entire time trying to fix the problems and balance the game in a way that people would actually want to play the dang thing in the first place, fall behind, never release additional content, and then just shut the whole thing down after 2 or 3 years, i.e. Anthem. So when that happens, whatever money you spend on that game, what is it afterwards? It's nothing. The instant it's not supported, it's nothing. But they pushed it, and there are still some live service games out there. And there's certainly live service elements to a lot of stuff, and a lot of that ties into DLC and into microtransactions. And here's what I kind of touched on before that I wanted to come back to. Here's what really needs to be remembered about microtransactions. They used to be a joke. There was a time, I'm old enough to remember a time, when the idea of paying for horse armor in Skyrim was a joke. It was a point of mockery. Everybody said, this is the stupidest thing. Nobody's going to do it. And those kinds of cosmetic purchases done as microtransactions are so beyond standard, nobody questions it anymore. We think, oh, they brought it out and everyone laughed, so it's not a problem now. No. These corporations can and will continue to hit these things until they are normalized, even if they are points of nothing but mockery. Take, for instance, what happened with airlines and checked bags. There was a time your first checked bag on a flight was free. That was the standard. Then American Airlines decided, we're going to start charging people for the first checked bag. And there was some outrage, but there was also a lot of mockery, a lot of laughing, a lot of people saying, well, just go to another airline then. Guess what? They all started doing it. They all did it. They standardized it. And now, no matter how you fly, your first checked bag is going to cost you money. And if it doesn't, that's the exception. It's not the rule anymore. Anything that they can standardize to bring in more money, they will. Even when it's something as ludicrous as BMW charging a subscription fee for heated seats. Because let us not forget that that is now a thing. That BMW, makers of some of the most expensive cars in the world, the heated seat feature was the built-in feature of the car. It's a thing the car can do. You can't access it without paying an $18 a month subscription to heat your own butt with something that is built into the thing that you theoretically bought. Because they want continuous streams of income. This is part of why a lot of these shows that are on streaming get limited or even no physical release. Because a streaming service is something that you keep paying for month over month over month. But if somebody buys Stranger Things on Blu-ray, Netflix only gets money from that purchase once. But if somebody stays subscribed for Stranger Things, waiting for the next season and watching other stuff in the meantime, every month, that's more money. They want the continual feed of money more than the initial purchase, even if that purchase is higher, at least initially. Something that I brought up when I talked about the HBO things, a lot of editing software. I used to edit with Adobe editing software. I don't anymore, actually, for reasons that aren't related to this, but it allows me to bring it up anyway, and I can slag off Adobe. You used to just be able to buy editing software from Adobe, and it wasn't cheap. Let me be clear. The good stuff, like not just the Elements, but Premiere Pro, was never cheap to buy. But you used to be able to, and now you can't. Now it's $200 some odd for a year's subscription that you pay monthly for. And so to take someone like me, even if I, initially had to shell out $300 to buy editing software, I now owned it for as long as it works for me. But if I'm paying a monthly fee after a year and a half, I've now already paid as much as it cost me previously to just own it forever. And then that keeps going for as long as I need it. And this is my job. I need it. I need editing software. This is stuff that is necessary for me to be able to work. And a lot of these places are moving to a subscription model. And the thing is, this is not even as new as what I'm talking about here. These moves from Adobe, from BMW, the video game stuff, this is what? 5, 10 years old? Problem's way older than that. Because I had the joy of working a corporate job before I was able to make this my living. Support me on my Patreon if you want to be able to help me continue to make this my living. But I worked at a job for 9 years. I worked in sales. And I remember when they brought in a new CRM, that is Customer Resource Management program. And we had to go through a ton of training on how to use that. And our bosses breathed down our necks to use this thing because the company was paying a subscription for it. They wanted to be sure that they weren't wasting their money. So at a corporate level, this kind of stuff has actually been going on for a while, and not even just with software. John Deere has gotten in trouble for doing things to its tractors so that the actual farmers who buy these things can't repair them themselves. Monsanto is a company that makes, amongst a ton of other stuff, they make seeds. And any farmer who uses seeds that have been genetically altered by Monsanto, which is a lot of them, if not most, they can't harvest the seeds from their own plants and replant them the next year because the patent on the seeds is owned by the company. Even though you bought the seeds, grew the crops on your land for your business, you have to buy more from the same company the next year. You cannot be sustaining it yourself. Everything is being designed so that we cannot self-sustain, and we have to go back to these companies for things that we need. Not just things that we want, but things that we need. We have to go through them, and we have to keep paying them continuously. And this is ideal for corporations because when you have to go by the old model, which is make a product, sell a product, and then if you want more money after that, make a new product and then sell that. You know what's a lot less expensive to do? Make a product and then build a system so that people pay you continually for that product. And suddenly you aren't having to do all the R&D, all the work to get a new product out right away before your income starts to dip. You are on sustained income. Will you still release another product? Yeah, probably eventually. Sometimes the money's even better doing that. To bring it back to video games, take Destiny. Destiny was a game that had a lot of online content, and it was touted that it was going to last for years. It was going to last for 10 years. It didn't, because eventually they decided, actually, let's just put out Destiny 2. So maybe you still release a new product, but up until you do, you're getting continual stuff, which means you can wait longer. You can spend less, depending on how you've built the thing, to bring it back again to video games with the live service model. You know what costs a lot less than building a whole new product? Whole new assets, whole new architecture, mechanics, and systems and all that. Adding more stuff onto something that's already built. Costs less money, takes less time. Like I said, the only reason that the live service model died as, well, not completely died, as I said, but failed to latch on the way that it easily could have is because they were releasing such half-baked products. If they'd released good products, that could be the dominant model in video games right now. It's not because they got greedy and they overstepped it. They released half-baked products and thought we'd stick around forever for those. And you know what? We won't. But in theory, that is the exact same kind of model. You have your initial release, which they would still charge people 60 to 70 bucks for, just like back when you used to be able to own the thing yourself forever. They'd charge you that, and then they would find ways to nickel and dime you forever, whether it be with season passes, whether it be cosmetic stuff, whether it be gameplay advantages, whatever they could get other money from you. And it is way easier just to slot in new stuff, a new character, a new area into this existing thing, rather than build a whole thing from scratch. Why do that? That's more work. That costs us more. These places want to make continuous money while doing less. That is the point. That is why things that used to be standard are now something that we have to pay continuously for. That's why editing software is rented. That's why BMW is charging for the ability to turn on your heated seats. That's why, again, I'm old enough to remember in games where alternate costumes and hidden characters and alternate modes and all this stuff was just built into the game. Maybe at most hidden behind like a cheat code, or you had to progress a certain amount in the game to get it, but it was there. You got it when you bought the thing. All that stuff has been diced up, and now they want you to pay for it. The things that we used to just get, we don't get anymore. They don't want us to own things. They want us to rent and subscribe. And as I said, whatever value is retained is not ours, even if we quote unquote buy it. Because if I had bought, when they were still available, the physical copies of the first 2 seasons of Infinity Train, whatever value, probably at least initially diminished value, probably a lot more now, because now you can't get the dang things, but whatever value those DVD copies retained was mine. I could sell them. They became an asset, a minuscule asset they would have been, but they were mine to do with. They were mine to repurpose, to cash out on, whatever. You can't do that with the digital purchase. And you definitely can't do that when what the thing is a subscription or a rental. I'm trying very hard not to simply be recycling things that have been pointed out by James Stephanie Sterling. If you aren't subscribed to the Jimquisition, you should be. But they're right, especially about the fact that corporations don't want money. They want all the money. They want every scrap they can possibly get. Because when you make a product that just gets bought, there's a limited amount of money you can make on that. There's only so many people who will want it. And so even if you market it perfectly, make it available to the right people, easy to get, you're only going to make so much. But if you can make those people continue to pay you for access to it indefinitely, well, that is not just more money. That is an unreasonable amount of money. That's an amount of money that's easy to lose track of. That's an amount of money that becomes a normal part of your life, where every month you just think, oh, well, this much of my income goes to X thing. When maybe we should be thinking, why am I still paying for this? Why don't I own it? For how much money I have sunk into it? For how long I've been paying for this? And I'm not saying that every subscription service is a scam. I do think a lot of things like Netflix, like Disney Plus or what have you, like you get something for what you're paying for. You get access to a lot of stuff. They're putting out a lot of original stuff. So don't mistake me and think that I'm saying every subscription service or streaming or whatever is bad. No, I think some of them are worth the money that they charge. But that's the model that these corporations want to make everything as much as they possibly can. And even within that model, even where I feel like I'm getting a decent amount of stuff for my money, it's stuff that could be taken from me at any moment. That is the world that these corporations are building. a world where they own everything and they charge us monthly for access to all of it. And I kind of wish I had like a lighter note to end on, but I don't. That's where we're headed. That's what they're trying to make. That's what legislators are failing to do anything about. That's what the courts won't address. That's what's going on. And it's going to continue to be a bigger and bigger and bigger problem, impacting a higher percentage of things that it's already impacting, and it'll start impacting a wider range of industries. So yeah, I just wanted to use HBO Max as a way to launch into pointing out just how screwed up this whole thing is. Welcome to capitalism. You'll get your bill at the end of the month. Whatever your thoughts are on any of this, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. I mentioned my Patreon. And yeah, I'm sure some people will call me hypocritical. Well, you're charging a monthly fee for the Patreon. I like to think I give people decent stuff for what I do. There's early access to videos. There's the Patreon exclusive Discord. There's a number of things. Check it out. Why not? I can hate capitalism and still participate. I have to participate. I live in this society. I don't have a choice but to be a capitalist unless I want to learn how to forage in the woods. And I don't want to do that. I don't think I'd be good at it. I think I would starve. Patreon means I don't starve. Begrudge me that, I guess. I gotta find a lighter topic to do later in the month. I'll do my best. Well, we do actually have some fun stuff like planned for later in this month. So hopefully this will be as heavy as I need to get. But yeah. Thank you for sticking this far into it, if you did. What I really want you to remember is that even as all this nonsense goes on, you are beautiful. You are valid. You are loved. You're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Time to give my thanks to my highest supporting patrons. That would include Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Theotha Boyd, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Zach, Idolin, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam RDL Taylor, Shane Ross, Shaylee Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. If you want your name said while these guys try and distract me, consider looking at the rewards of my Patreon.